And we turn to item 1. Questions, and I call on the Honourable Member for Arbory, Castletown and Malew, Mr Moorhouse, to ask question 1.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'd like to ask the Chief Minister what assessment has been made of the impact of flight cancellations on the island's reputation.
Minister.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And I thank the Honourable Member for his question. The aviation sector across the UK and Europe has experienced a difficult time in recent weeks as travel has opened up following the impact of COVID-19. Both airlines and airports have had staffing and other operational challenges as they gear back up to cope with the level of passenger traffic. And the Island Man is not immune to these challenges and has experienced some level of impact, often as a knock-on from delays and cancellations on broader route networks. Whilst there has been no formal assessment of the impact, Government has been in regular dialogue with airline operators serving the island, both ahead of and during the TT period, and I would like to acknowledge the airline's efforts in seeking to maintain a reliable service as possible. The importance of the TT period for the island's economy was stressed to operators, along with highlighting the significant challenge that cancelled flight presents to the island, given the high level of bookings on alternative forms of transport and in visitor accommodation. During the TT period, additional contact was made with airlines, given a number of cancellation and delays within a short period. Again, these were as a result of knock-on delays as a result of operational challenges at airports in the UK and Europe, resulting in crew being out of hours or aircraft becoming unavailable to provide scheduled services. As in previous years, Government has in place a cross-agency contingency plan to deal with the impact of travel disruption, ensuring that support is available to provide guidance to individuals impacted and provide access to some form of accommodation on island if required. Dialogue with airline operators continues, and whilst the island has seen some level of disruption, there has been assurance that services to the Island Man are recognised as being of critical importance, and airlines will do all they can to ensure these services are maintained.
Supplementary, Mr Moorhouse.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker and Chief Minister, for that reassuring answer in terms of relationships with the airline industry. We all recognise there have been cancellations across Europe, but in terms of the Isle of Man, are there very specific issues in terms of the lighting? That's an area that's been raised several times recently, but also the hours when the airports actually open. In terms of those two key issues, is that something the Chief Minister has actually considered and has been discussed amongst relevant people? Thank you.
And Chief Minister.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I think it's worth pointing out, just before I move to those two specific supplementaries, that in terms of the numbers of flights over the last fortnight, that 71 flights by EasyJet were scheduled, 66 of those flights operated, and 5 flights were cancelled. And Loganair had 100 flights scheduled, 96 of those flights operated, and 4 flights were cancelled. Obviously, it's a huge disappointment when any flight is cancelled, but I would ask honourable members to, and indeed the public, to put that into context with the substantial amount, hundreds of flights that have been cancelled across the UK during this period of time. In terms of the lighting at the Isle of Man airport, I acknowledge, Madam Deputy Speaker, that a number of diversions due to poor weather do occur throughout the year. As an island with its airport in a coastal location, visibility as one component of the weather may occasionally be a problem. Airlines and aircraft operators take into account many factors when calculating their minima for landing, one of which is the approach lighting configuration. The airport's lighting system supports our Category 1 instrument landing system, which is very typical for airports of a similar scale. The physical infrastructure changes required to support aircraft landings in much lower visibility would not be limited to the lighting, and their benefit for the number of flights affected when balanced against the investment required is not clear-cut. Airport facilities and infrastructure are constantly kept under review with the aim of maximising operational ability within the available resource. And in terms of opening times, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I will be brief, the operational hours of the airport published in the Aeronautical Information publication states a year-round closing time of 8:45 p.m. The airport often receives and accepts flights beyond this time up to a limit of 11 p.m. Some of these requests are agreed for a prolonged period in advance with particular operators, for example the summer season extension for EasyJet, However, practical constraints, including those of minimum rest periods for certain operational staff, occasionally place some limits on extensions, particularly when considered against the additional requirement to support overnight call-outs from the air ambulance.
Further supplementary, Mr Moorhouse.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and thank you, Chief Minister. In terms of cancellations, it's still over 5%, which is quite significant if you're a business person requiring regular flights. Also, if you've got health conditions, and there are two areas that people have actually actively raised with me. In terms of those areas, is it something that you've actually actively considered, and is it something that the relevant people are taking into account when looking at links with the island and the neighbouring jurisdiction? Thank you.
I agree, Madam Deputy Speaker, that any flight cancellation is of significant inconvenience and really something that should not be just accepted without explanation. I think I've set out the framework in which airlines are operating at the moment. We take this incredibly seriously, and I know that both the Minister for Enterprise and the Minister for Infrastructure are continuing to consider this, and as I said, in terms of airport operation and facilitation, we continue to review the performance of the airport, and I hope we'll continue to consider that and its purpose and how it needs to be improved in terms of facilitation for flights over the next 12 months.
Mr Wannenberg.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Could I ask the Chief Minister, does he agree that much money has been wasted on useless projects such as widening the runway starter extension, and would have been better spent devoted to improving runway approach? Thank you.
I think that's a bit outside the remit, but Chief Minister, as much as you can answer.
Well, I think I'm not sure that I entirely agree with the Honourable Member's statement, nor am I necessarily qualified to really determine what would be the best capital expenditure. Nevertheless, what I can tell him is that significant improvements have been made to the airport's landing arrangements over the last few years, and we're going to continue to assess what needs to be done in terms of improving, as I said, facilitation of flights onto our airport. Everybody recognises that there is a strong economic link between our airport, flights incoming and flights outgoing. That, as I said, I've assured honourable members that we have been in touch with the airlines, particularly at the beginning of this month when there was substantial cancellations across the United Kingdom. We've worked with both airlines to try and emphasise the importance of the island, particularly of this period. We're going to continue to do that, and my assurance to honourable members is that there's a clear-cut business case for us to make improvements to the airport that will benefit our economy, then we should give the utmost serious consideration to that. And I look forward to discussing this further with the Infrastructure Minister in the coming weeks and months.
Question 2, Mr Moorhouse.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I would like to ask the Chief Minister what progress has been made with the development of the Airport Technology Gateway, and who is responsible for driving this forward.
Mr Chief Minister.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Treasury Minister last updated the Honourable Member Mr Glover in the House of Keys at the end of April and confirmed that delays to the Airport Technology Gateway project had been incurred mainly due to the impact of global inflationary pressures and the corresponding increase in construction costs, materials and labour across all capital projects on the island. I am pleased to confirm that in accordance with the commitment and support of Tynwald, the Airport Technology Gateway project management team are now moving the project forwards by reconvening the design team members consisting of quantity surveyors, health and safety management, road and electrical engineers and landscapers. During the last 4 weeks, the Airport Technology Gateway team have collectively been working to update the technical design, stage I2 of the project, design and surveys to ensure conformity with planning department requirements and budgets. I can confirm that during the next few weeks, the Airport Technology Gateway team will be working to finalise the tender, action report and investment decision, stage I3 of the project in compliance with the Attorney General's Office requirements by pulling together the contract scope ready for tender of contracts. This is a key step forward to the commencement of the next stage of the project, which will entail work by approved contractors on the implementation of the approved plans for the enabling scheme.
Supplementary, Mr Moorhouse.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and thank you, Chief Minister, for a really positive update there. Given the potential restructuring of the Department for Enterprise, will the Airport Technology Gateway be part of that portfolio, or has the time come to consider something more radical? Thank you.
Chief Minister.
Well, at the moment, I think that we require some stability and not the risk of anything radical. So the Department for Enterprise will continue to focus with the project management team to swiftly and successfully complete the enabling scheme and then to finalise plan for the next phase master plan. Thank you.
Further supplementary, Mr Moorhouse.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and thank you, Chief Minister. Looking forward slightly, once we actually got this next phase completed, would that be the opportune moment to create an independent board to drive this key initiative forward, to bring in various entrepreneurs, to bring in various other experts, to enable it to get to the next stage and develop even more successfully than it potentially has so far? Thank you.
Chief Minister.
Well, as I just said, I think it's important that the Department and the project management team work swiftly to complete the enabling scheme. The ATG team has capably managed recent changes and is currently working with the chairman on a programme of stakeholder management supporting long-term plans for the future. Furthermore, an integral part of the master plan will be public consultation, so working with local businesses and the community is an important and integral part of the ATG strategy. If my right honourable friend has any strategic ideas or proposals that he wishes to bring forward supporting the future success of the ATG, then we would welcome those.
A final supplementary, Mr Moorhouse.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and thank you, Chief Minister, for that offer. In terms of recent changes within the Airport Technology Gateway team, there's been two prominent losses in terms of key business people. Are similar entrepreneurs being looked at to be brought in terms of allowing that dynamic thought process to be included and continue to be within the management team of the Airport Technology Gateway? Thank you, Madam
Chief
Deputy.
Minister to reply.
We continue to keep the makeup of that team under review, Madam Deputy Speaker.
We move on then to question 3, which is also in the hands of the Honourable Member for Arbory, Castletown and Malew, Mr Moorhouse.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I would like to ask the Chief Minister how many committees and subcommittees established by the Council of Ministers are currently sitting.
Madam Deputy Speaker, there are currently 10 committees and subcommittees established by the Council of Ministers or the Chief Minister that are currently sitting. These are the Brownfield Regeneration Steering Group, Legislative Programme Subcommittee, the Economic Strategy Board, the Housing and Communities Board, the Island Plan Delivery Committee, the National Policy and Strategy Committee, the National Security Committee, Isle of Man National Armed Forces Day Committee, Isle of Man Holocaust Memorial Day Committee, Isle of Man Preservation of War Memorials, which was established by the Council of Ministers after recommendation from Timor. Thank you.
Supplementary, Mr Moorhouse.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and thank you, Chief Minister, for that useful update. In terms of those committees, are most of them continuing from before the last general election? And in terms of a list of their membership, is that available in terms of the chairperson, the members, and also the remit of the committees? Is that publicly available? Thank you.
Chief Minister to reply.
Yes, that is publicly available information, Madam Deputy Speaker, and if it's not, or honourable members are struggling to access it, I'm very happy to establish where that deficiency lies and ensure that that's circulated.
Final supplementary, Mr Moorhouse.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and thank you, Chief Minister. For the purpose of accountability and analysis of costs, what assessment is carried out into this area of government beyond that of the Economic Policy Review Committee? Thank you.
Chief Minister.
Well, if the honourable member is determining the cost of these committees, I would suggest that these committees by themselves are actually operating at a very, very low cost. They've obviously got secretariat support, but most of these are cross-government committees where the work is actually being undertaken within the government. And in terms of accountability, I think we've clearly outlined in our island plan our key areas for achievement and delivery. I would suggest that accountability is overseen by the Council of Ministers, but also by this Honourable Court. Thank you.
We turn to question 4, and the Honourable Member for Uncombe, Mr Callister.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I ask the Health Minister how many people are on the waiting list for hip operation, and what is the average time from referral to treatment?
Mr Hooper to reply.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. Currently, there are 215 patients listed for hip operations. Unfortunately, the Manx Care clinical systems are not designed to support the reporting of referral time to treatment, which is why, as part of the mandated objectives this year, a large programme of work is well underway to deliver improvements that will enable the tracking and active management of waiting lists in line with referral to treatment measures. So whilst a referral to treatment measure is not available, I can advise that the mean average waiting time of an individual currently on the waiting list for a hip operation is 370 days, with the most common waiting time being 217 days.
Supplementary, Mr Callister.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I think I heard the Minister say the average was 370 days, but I have several constituents who have contacted me in the last few months to say they've been waiting 2 to 3 years to have hip operations. Can I ask the Minister what he's doing in order to speed up the process, in order to actually get these operations done?
Mr Hooper.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. In relation quite specifically to orthopaedic surgery, Manx Care have undertaken a waiting list initiative programme in partnership with private sector providers to try and tackle some of these long waiting lists. The Honourable Member is correct. The figures I gave were an average or a most common waiting time as well. The longest waiting time, I think, is in excess of 900 waiting days, which is about 3 years, as the Honourable Member alludes to. Reducing our waiting lists is one of the key mandated objectives for Manx Care. It is something they're working very hard on. They've already managed to make significant inroads in their Phase 1 restoration and recovery, and we are very hopeful to be moving on to Phase 2 of our restoration and recovery plan, which should provide much more significant inroads into those waiting lists.
Further supplementary, Mr Callister.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I thank the Minister for his response today. Would the Minister agree with me that if we are having to wait 2 to 3 years, this does seriously affect somebody's quality of life and getting them back to a normal life and, if needed, in many cases, back to work as well?
Health Minister.
Yes.
We move on to question 5 in the hands of the Honourable Member for North Douglas, Mr Ashford.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I beg to ask the Minister for Health and Social Care what progress has been made on the development and implementation of an autism pathway.
Minister Hooper to reply.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Fundamental to the development of the autism strategy is ensuring we give autistic people, families and carers the opportunity to express their views, experiences, needs and values, so the strategy reflects what matters most to them. A public consultation commenced on the 29th of April this year to capture feedback online, and the Department has held 7 face-to-face drop-in sessions alongside Manx Care. The consultation closed on the 10th of June 2022, and the analysis work for this has already commenced. The Department is intending to use information derived from this consultation to draft the final autism strategy and an accompanying implementation plan that will incrementally improve the autism pathway over the coming years. The intention is to publish the autism strategy by the end of the calendar year. The strategy will set out the pathway for referral and assessment, diagnosis, access to services, the transition process between child and adult services, and the broader support networks within the community to ensure we meet the needs of autistic people, families and carers.
Supplementary, Mr Ashford.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker, and can I welcome the statement and answer from the Minister. Having a national autism strategy is absolutely superb, but one of the things I found when I first became Minister for Health and Social Care is that DHSC was never short of strategies, but it was the implementation plans that were always lacking. The Honourable Minister has just referred to the implementation plans. Can he assure us here in this Honourable House that this isn't going to be just another strategy document, and the implementation plans will have very, very clear and defined targets, because again we have seen implementation plans that haven't necessarily led to anything getting implemented. Can the Minister assure us that this is being taken seriously, because it's dragged on for a long number of years now?
Minister to reply.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. Yes, I can absolutely assure the Honourable Member that this is being taken seriously. I think it's fair to say that the original Pathfinder report was completed back in 2020, actually towards the end of the year. COVID obviously has disrupted significantly all of the work that's been going on, but this is absolutely a priority for the Department. There will be an implementation plan, like I've already mentioned. I've decided actually to assign some political oversight and responsibility to this, because it is critical that we get this system and this strategy right, and the Honourable Member for Douglas East, Ms Farragher, will be leading on bringing this strategy and the implementation plan forward. So I would encourage the Honourable Member to give her a nudge if this does look like it's going to start dragging, but I can assure him that the intention of the Department is to roll this out comprehensively, and I look forward to engaging in the debate around the 3-year mandate later in this month in another place, which I think will help inform exactly which priorities Manx Care should be taking forward over the next few years.
Honourable Member for Erin Michael, Mr Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Many parents and guardians of young adults with autism worry about the future when they are no longer able or there to give their young people the independence in the community that they have worked hard to achieve. Can the Minister reassure these parents and guardians that thought and planning will be given to provide necessary facilities for young adults with autism so that they continue to have the opportunity of independent living in a community setting with obvious safeguards? And does he recognise the long-term value of this on many levels? Thank you.
Minister to reply.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. Yes, I would agree with all of that, actually. And this is why taking feedback and experiences and expectations of service users into account is absolutely vital. So I haven't seen the consultation responses yet. It only closed last week. But my expectation is that consultation will be full of comments and suggestions around independent living and respite care and support and ongoing support. I think it's also important to bear in mind some of the work that's going on around housing in terms of developing a housing-first supported living model. The whole principle behind that is to allow and enable people to live safely and securely in their own home with the right support provided to them as that is needed. And so, yes, I can completely acknowledge the comments the Honourable Member has made, and I really do hope that is what comes out of the consultation responses.
Honourable Member for Arbory, Castletown and Malew, Mr Glover.
Would the Minister agree, and I thank him for facilitating a visit to the Department of Health and Social Security yesterday, and added urgency is given by the weight of response to that consultation on autism. I think it was somewhere in the region of over 360 responses, which really does give that sense of urgency now for action to be taken.
Minister to reply.
Yes, I'd agree. I mean, I think it's quite well established that we don't have an effective autism approach on the Isle of Man. That isn't a big secret, and if you talk to service users at the moment, that is experience they will share with you. And so, yes, this does have a particular urgency, as the Honourable Member for Douglas North has already alluded to. This has been ongoing for a long time, and it is my intention to get it over the line.
Mr Ashford.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. In his original answer, the Minister referred to having the strategy come forward by the end of the calendar year, which is very welcome. I was wondering, are there any indicative timescales for the implementation plan that will come after that?
Minister to reply.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. There aren't, but actually my intention would be to try and bring the implementation plan alongside the strategy. I think, as has been alluded to already, having a document that's nice and pretty and sits on a shelf is worthless. Actually, it needs to be accompanied by how we're going to actually deliver that.
Final supplementary, Mr Ashford.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Honourable Minister referred to the Pathfinder development in 2020, which was when I was Minister in the Department. At that time, there was a delivery group made up of DHSC and also DESC, because there is crossover with education. Can I ask, is that delivery group still in place, and is the engagement with DESC ongoing in this regard?
Minister to reply.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. As far as I understand it, yes, but I'll double check that and make sure that I circulate a proper answer to him.
And we move on to question 6. I call on the Honourable Member for North Douglas, Mr Wannenberg.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'd like to ask the Minister of Infrastructure whether he is satisfied that adequate planning was put in place to ensure all public transport services over the TT period, what deviations were experienced during that period, and what, if any, impact there has been on bus drivers' morale. Thank you.
Minister Crookall to reply.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Planning for the TT was undertaken some time ago and completed in April, and the TT timetables were published along with the service changes which commenced on 9th of May. We all know there had been difficulties before TT and we are aware of concerns, but the full service was delivered and many extra journeys operated over that period. An extremely fluid service is operated during this peak period as road closures, both planned and emergency, and events requiring large volumes of passengers to be moved take place throughout this festival. Bus Vanning has to react immediately to these changes in circumstances and will flex its services to suit the needs of our visitors and the local community. Similarly, it is difficult to predict the certainty where the visitors will wish to travel to. For example, on Mad Sunday this year, Peel was more popular than historically, and more people wanted to travel there than Ramsey. Extra services to Peel were added to cope with this peak demand, and everyone who wished to travel was carried, with 6,250 passenger journeys being made on this route compared with 4,140 3 years ago. Those drivers and operational staff involved in delivering the service during this busy period certainly went the extra mile to see that all the passengers were carried. The response from the team throughout this period has been excellent, and I wish to thank everybody down at Transport Services for their efforts. The They did go the extra mile at times, and it does have an impact on the staff morale. I know that for the long hours they put in. The department is now working with all staff and the team at Bank Circus to see what we can do to improve morale down there.
Supplementary, Mr Wannenberg.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Minister stated that the full service was provided. I'm aware that a number of services duties were cancelled and not communicated to the social media pages. So on the 24th of May in this House, Mr Callister questioned yourself about the services over TT fortnight, where you undertook that you would provide the very best service that you can to provide the very best service you could. Are you certain that your best was good enough? Thank you.
Minister to reply.
Thank you. I believe that the best was the officers did try to, and the drivers' staff did try to deliver what was the best service they could with the staff they had available to them. The increased journey times due to traffic congestion have left passengers waiting longer at stops, particularly intermediate stops, with buses often operating up to 20 minutes late by the end of their journey. A round trip from Douglas to Ramsey via Peel on Mad Sunday was taking 4.5 hours instead of the normal 3. So people did think that buses had been cancelled. I'm told that all buses ran, but they might have been late. And at some stages, if you're waiting for that bus from Douglas to Ramsey and you're on the last leg, it might have been 40 minutes late, but there would have been other buses that were late beforehand. So I am told that although there was delays, big delays in some circumstances, all the buses ran when they were supposed to.
Call on the Honourable Member for Onken, Mr Callister.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I thank the Minister for his responses this morning. Can I just ask the Minister exactly how many buses ran in 2019 compared to how many buses were made available in 2022?
Minister to reply.
I don't have that information, Madam Deputy Speaker, but I will certainly get it and supply it to honourable members.
And Honourable Member for Douglas South, Mrs Christian.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'd just like to ask the Minister, were contingency plans part of the planning done in April? And if they were, what were they? And also, could he just go into a little bit more detail about what the department is actually doing to improve morale? Thank you.
Minister to reply.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. As far as the morale goes, we have officers from the Human Resources Department and we have an officer who is dedicated to morale, not just in that area, but and I think the Honourable Member will be aware from her time in the department, that there's an officer that's dedicated to the whole of the DOI and morale, and basically the well-being of the officers and the employees, and he goes round and speaks to them all regularly, and he will continue to do that as soon as possible following this week. The bus timetable is written at the time with what we think is the staff that we're going to have. And we have, I am told, we have delivered that service that was put out on 9th of May. Now, my honoured colleague, Mr Wannenberg, is smiling at me across the chamber here and says he has proof of cancellations, and we'll take that up at a later date. But, you know, we have got through this. Yes, there were delays, but I do believe that all the services were delivered. And if the member's got another question or part of that question I didn't get, I'll happily pick it up.
Call on Mrs Christian.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Thank you for bringing up well-being in your answer just there, Minister. Does he agree with me that actually well-being is extremely important for the morale of the staff? And things such as when rotas are put out just a couple of days before they're actually to work, actually isn't really conducive to well-being, because these workers actually have families and care and their own lives to actually organise. And actually, we understand, the Honourable Member, Mr Wannenberg, and I understand that these rotas aren't actually going out till a couple of days beforehand, and that's not really conducive to good morale. Would he look at that for us, please?
Minister to reply.
I'm happy to say it's absolutely being looked at this moment, Madam Deputy Speaker.
Final supplementary, Mr Wannenberg.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I wasn't quite sure what the Minister said. Could you just clarify that all services ran over TT? Is that the case? Thank you.
As far as I'm led to believe, all the published services that were in the timetable that was published on May the 9th were delivered, albeit some of them were obviously very late, as I said, when it's taking 4.5 hours for doing a round trip.
And we move on to question 7, which is in the hands of the Honourable Member for Arbory, Castletown and Malew, Mr Moorhouse.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I would like to ask the Minister for Infrastructure what bus funding policy is on informing bus users about cancellations and delays. Thank you.
Minister to reply.
Bus funding have a procedure for communications to bus users about disruptions and cancellations. This procedure states that communication of all bus disruptions, where possible, should be disseminated to users by a travel alert system which will be in place on which is in place on social media, the website, or by calling 66 25 25. It will also be sent out internally to drivers via our Tetra radio comms and our ticket machines message system, so bus drivers are able to tell the customers as well. There is a caveat on the disruption procedure that during peak times, i.e. TT, when passenger numbers are likely to exceed a daily amount of 10,000 and road closures and congestion are altering regularly, the bus supervisors manage these disruptions, and it is not recommended to follow the normal procedure, as within minutes things change again and therefore results is incorrect and or it results in incorrect information being circulated. Therefore, during these peak periods, bus vanding will put out comms that recommend customers use Find My Bus or call 66 25 25 or visit one of our information points down at the bus station or at any of the bus stations where we have an officer standing, an inspector standing at the moment at that time.
Supplementary, Mr Moorhouse.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and thank you, Minister. Has the policy changed? Because since the 31st of May, announcements by Isle of Man Transport appear to have focused on the risk of delays, and that's clearly very different. If you're suggesting a risk of a delay, that's going to create more confusion and passengers are going to look for alternatives. And that may have been partially due to the TT, but I was aware of a situation last night where a person was trying to ring the number to get advice about a cancellation or a late arrival. Thank you.
Minister to reply.
Thank you very much. As previously mentioned, and I'm sure the Honourable Member understands, the island travel situation is extremely busy over the TT period, with great efforts made by the team to cover demand from both residents and visitors. Additional drivers have been moved around on an hourly basis to meet the demands, and many at-risk services actually run or are only affected by a short delay. To make an advisory announcement early to allow our passengers to plan their essential journeys is more beneficial to our customers than to simply advise that a particular service will be cancelled when it may not be. I would remind the Honourable Member that the recently launched Find My Bus service has been instrumental in providing accurate live service data for those able to access it, with additional staff placed at key locations, as I've just said, at the airport and at Lord Street bus station. Thank you, Madam.
Supplementary, Honourable Member for Douglas North, Mr Ashford.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. 12 months ago, this didn't seem to be the issue that it is today, with now what seems to be fairly regular cancellations or needs to modify the timetable. So I was wondering, Madam Deputy Speaker, in the Minister's view, what has changed in that time?
Minister.
Basically, a shortage of staff available to the office staff to do the rotas, if you like. We've got, as I've said before, I think it's 10 vacancies at the moment and just about 20 people off on sick at the moment. So that's been the problem.
Mr Moorhouse.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I recognise that trying out new innovative policies during the current times is to be encouraged to a certain degree, but one policy that has concerned me is the decision not to stop at various bus stops because of bunching of buses. And I'm aware of 2 of these that happened in Castletown in the last few weeks. On one occasion, a bus just drove straight past a waiting group of people, and I was informed that another bus will be coming quite soon. It was well over 10 minutes. And another one where a man had actually to jump off the bus after the bus stop because the bus didn't stop and he wanted to get off at that stop. So there are issues in terms of trying out new things when clearly there are pressures, but at the same time we need to be doing it in a safe way and making sure that customers who want to use the bus can access the bus. Does the Minister agree? Thank you.
Minister to reply.
Safety is always paramount with our staff, our drivers, and them looking after their passengers, I would say. If anybody was seen or had to jump off afterwards, I would suggest at least that bus was stopped, and you're not insinuating that there was any danger involved in that. If a bus didn't stop at a bus stop, it's because it's full and there's nobody wanted to get off there. And there would have been, as you said, there was another bus just behind. The bus drivers are in contact with each other and they are trying to run as best service as they can. And if the honourable member's got any issues, with the service over the TTA period, and we can learn from those, more than happy to take that up with them afterwards and pass that on to the officers.
Honourable members for East Douglas, Ms Farragher.
Malew, Lias Florida. Just to follow on from Minister Ashford's question about what's changed over the last 12 months, could the Minister detail what plans are in place to address these issues that we've been having?
Minister.
Yes, as honourable members will be well aware, for the last couple of months I've said there will be a full bus review, or a full review of the bus timetable, which will start in the next couple of weeks once we've got TT out of the way. And that
Mr Moorhouse.
should cover that.
Thank you, Mrs Deputy Speaker. In terms of positivity, is there the possibility that the timetable can be adjusted to reflect the number of drivers and enable the service to be provided that people are expecting? Because at the moment we seem to have a credibility gap between what is available in terms of bus drivers and the timetable. As soon as the two can be merged, then hopefully it will be better for everyone. Is that something the Ministry is actively looking at? Thank you.
Minister, to reply.
Thank you. I would suggest that was what was done when the original timetable was put out last year, that you don't put a timetable out if you can't deliver it, and you certainly wouldn't do it if you haven't got the drivers to do so. And that will be taken into consideration again this year.
Ms Farragher.
Malew, Lias Florida. Can I just ask, why do we need a review to tell us that there's not enough bus drivers? Thank you.
Minister.
It's not to tell us that we haven't got the right enough bus drivers. It's to say, are we doing the right routes, and is there enough buses going to some places and too many going to others, which I believe probably is the case at the moment.
Honourable member for Arbory, Castletown and Malew, Mr Glover.
Thank you. Would the Minister agree with me that there are moves taking place? We've got, I think, the recruitment of 5 additional drivers, and if anything's going to affect staff morale at bus van, and it's listening to what's being said in here today.
Minister.
Thank you to the honourable member from the department who's just asked that question, and I would totally agree, yes indeed. As I said, I would like to take this opportunity to thank all the staff at Transport Services for the effort they put in, and across the department, for others down at the airport too, while I'm on my feet, just to take that opportunity to say thank you to everybody that has gone above and beyond to deliver it as best a service as possible.
Yeah.
And question 8, Mr Moorhouse.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I would like to ask the Minister for Infrastructure how many bus services in May 2022 were operated by non-contracted bus drivers, and of these, how many were operated by supervisors and managers, administrative staff, non-contracted employees, off-island recruits and others. Thank you.
Minister Crookall.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. During the month of May 2022, 71 of the 18,500 journeys were undertaken by 2 staff members who are not contracted bus drivers and who fall into the category A, supervisors and managers. The other staff who drove during this time are contracted bus drivers, so no other services were operated by non-contracted bus drivers.
Mrs Christian.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Could the Minister confirm if there is a considerable increase of cost to the department if buses are operated by supervisors and managers? Thank you.
Minister, to reply.
Thank you very much indeed. I am told they drive at bus drivers' rates.
Mr Moorhouse, supplementary.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and thank you for that answer. It was quite interesting because I was going to come on to that as well. In terms of that clarification, is that something the Minister could look at? Because there seems to be a lot of anecdotal evidence that some senior staff are getting paid relative to their existing payments, which is causing concern. But also, with regards to categories A and B, is that work done as a general part of their contract, or is it merely a voluntary thing they're offering in terms of providing those extra hours and that extra provision? Thank you, Madam
Minister, to reply.
Thank you very much. I will check with HR again on the cost of the rate of pay of those officers, but I did actually ask the other week because there was rumours going around that a certain senior officer was getting ridiculous amounts of money, and I was absolutely categorically that was denied. That wasn't the case. Officers from down at Bank Circus who don't normally drive but are involved in the day-to-day running of the service but then do go out and drive, maybe they're called on if they're short during the office hours to go out, but a lot of them have worked in the evenings and at the weekends to help fulfil those services. And again, I thank them for what they've done and all the other drivers.
Further supplementary, Mr Moorhouse.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and thank you, Minister. In terms of the additional pressure put on these drivers who are doing a full-time job and everything else, is any extra safety consideration in place? Because it must be a tremendous stress and an additional thing to do, especially during TT, to go out and provide these bus services when you're doing a full-time job, especially if it's kind of one of the key roles within the company. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Minister?
There's obviously a limit, Madam Deputy Chairman, as to Deputy Speaker, sorry, as to how many hours drivers are allowed to work. But I would think they would know. Would like to think, hopefully, they would know themselves when they've had enough and they need a break, and they would do that.
Mrs. Christian, supplementary.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. It's my understanding that the previous CEO also drove buses during his tenure. Would he also, the Minister, at a later date, be able to confirm whether he was also paid the normal bus drivers as well? Great, thank you.
Minister?
The former CEO is employed as a casual driver and is paid at casual rates.
Final supplementary, Mr. Moorhouse.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. In terms of the existing bus timetable, once we get the additional 9 or 10 staff that are required, will there be any need at all for these additional drivers, or will it be fully staffed from the existing workforce? Thank you very much.
Minister to reply.
So, can you just repeat the first part of the question? Sorry, I missed that.
Yeah, once we actually get the additional 9 or 10 drivers that are required, will the existing service be functional from the existing employees, or will additional management staff have to come in periodically to help out? Thank you.
Minister?
Well, hopefully when those positions have been filled, that should be, we should be able to fulfil the service that we've put out there. But again, as I said, we've got nearly 20 drivers off on the sick at the moment, so that needs to be filled. So if we need to use the staff from down at Bank Circus, then hopefully they will continue to do that for us.
We come to question 9, and I understand this will not be asked today. We move to question 10. Mr. Moorhouse.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I would like to ask the Minister for Education, Sport and Culture how many teaching staff resigned on or before the final day for doing this during the academic year 2021-2022. Thank you.
Minister Edge to reply.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Based on the information recorded on the People Information Programme, as at the 13th of June 2022, 36 teaching staff have resigned during the 21-22 academic year. The number provided above does include those either retiring or leaving from leadership roles. Thank you.
Supplementary, Mr. Moorhouse.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. How do the figures compare with the previous 5 years? And in terms of the assessment of these numbers, does the department actually get additional data in terms of those people who are retiring close to retirement age, but also those that aren't on long-term sick? So are those people who you wouldn't be expecting to retire actually identified and potentially questioned by the department? Thank you.
Minister to reply.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Apologies. So, teachers leaving on the 31st of August 2018 was 17. That included retirements as well. On the 31st of August 2019, there was 37 teachers. August 20 was 19. August 21, 35. And currently this year, there's 36. With regards to whether we retain any information, obviously this year I know that there's 5 retired in our leadership roles and 31 resigned. And we do analysis on the data to see, and within the current year, the age profile is monitored by the department, and this monitoring has shown that in the last 12 months there were 11 teacher leavers under the age of 45, 9 in secondary and 2 in primary.
Further supplementary, Mr. Moorhouse.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and thank you, Minister, for that detailed answer. In terms of the latter series of figures, was any additional assessment carried out into those individuals and why they've chosen to go off on different routes? But also in terms of the department's current challenges, we heard about 22 staff having resigned in February. How far down the road are we with replacing those? And the other 15 staff, so the full number of 37 that was given, will all those be replaced by the start of the next academic year? Thank you.
Minister to reply.
Thank you. So within this current year, we've recruited 32 teachers. That was up to the 12th of May, and obviously we're continuing the ongoing recruitment of teachers through to September. And obviously we do aim to make sure we've got qualified teachers in front of all of our students at the start of a new school year. With regards to whether we do any further analysis, the CEO and the Deputy CEO do reach out to anybody that is leaving their employment. And lastly, the CEO has had a number of conversations with individuals with regards to their concerns for leaving. And obviously there's many reasons for people leaving teaching. Obviously some of it is down to workload. Some are choosing a different career path because there's many opportunities out there for them. But there's also people choosing to relocate back to closer to family following COVID.
Final supplementary, Mr Moorhouse.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and thank you, Minister. Does the Minister recognise the impact of the issues of the cost of living on the island, and as becoming a bigger and bigger problem, not only for the existing teachers, but also for those teachers who are looking to come and work here? In previous answers, there's been an indication given twice that the cost of housing, the support for housing, was being considered. The last occasion when that reassurance was given was February. We're now getting quite close to the start of the next academic year. We're needing several more additional teachers out there, I think another 14. Is anything on the table to encourage more teachers to come, but also to support the existing teachers? Thank you very much.
Minister to reply.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Yes, we're very conscious of the concerns of the cost of living that is getting experienced with all key worker areas on the island. We are looking at this. Currently, the policy allows up to £500 to be paid to teachers for a 2-year period. We are looking at that very closely to see if that is where the cliff edge comes after 2 years, and are we losing some teachers with regards to that. But what I would encourage any teacher who has got difficulties with any housing costs, that they do contact their head teacher, who will then get in touch with the department, and we can look at this on an individual basis. But going forward, we do need to have a strategic policy that helps people so there's no cliff edge at the end of the 2-year period.
Hear, hear.
Question 11, call on the Honourable Member for North Douglas, Mr Ashford.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I beg to ask the Minister for Environment, Food and Agriculture what plans there are to update Section 24 of the Building Control Act 1991 and the rest of that Act.
Minister Barber to reply.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I thank my honourable colleague for the question in respect of Section 24 of the Building Control Act 1991 and the rest of the Act as he specified. The section relates to buildings or structures that by reason of their ruinous, dilapidated or neglected condition or unfinished state are detrimental to the amenities of the neighbourhood, and I know this has been a concern of my colleague and a number of other members for some time, and such concerns have grown. In February 2010, the former Department of Local Government and the Environment provided guidance to local authorities around the island to assist them in dealing with unsightly buildings and land using powers available to them under both Section 24 of the Building Control Act 1991 and Section 14 of the Local Government Miscellaneous Provisions Act 1984 respectively. This guidance included a series of standard letters that could be used in a tiered approach to deal with minor to major degrees of unsightliness. In conjunction with the Attorney General's Chambers, training on court procedures was also offered to assist local authorities in taking their own prosecution cases. The Building Control Act was last updated in 2016, following a previous update in 2011 in respect of the matter of ruinous or dilapidated buildings. While there are no specific plans in place by DEFA to update Section 24, ruinous buildings of the Act, I remain open to a review of the provisions which are enforced by local authorities and would be happy to bring forward amendments should they be necessary. The Empty Properties Initiative is one of the work streams of the Housing and Communities Board, and we also look forward to working with the Board on this matter. I am advised the Board are seeking to consult with local authorities that have used Section 24 powers and expect to report their findings in July. The Department have already expressed their willingness to consider the results and any recommendations following that consultation. In terms of the rest of the Act, there are no immediate plans to update it. Thank you.
Supplementary, Mr Ashford.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And the Honourable Minister referred to 2010 and also the start of 2016. I raised a similar question to this 4.5 years ago with the Minister's predecessor, and he committed on the 12th of December 2017 here in this House to go back to the Department and examine Section 24 again. I think, very unlike me, I've been very patient, Madam Deputy Speaker, for 4.5 years. Can I ask the Minister what the results of that re-examination were, and if the Minister doesn't have the knowledge of that, if she would come back to Honourable Members with the details and conclusions of that reassessment?
Minister to reply.
Thank you. I believe there was a number of pieces of work done off the back of that question, although ultimately I don't think the majority were related to Section 24 of the Act. So there was updating of the approved documents, offering guidance to developers and builders, covering conservation of fuel and power in buildings and ventilation, and also an introduction of energy efficiency requirements in the Building Amendment Regulations 2019, Building Amendment Regulations 2020, and Building Control Approved Documents Amendment Order 2019, and that introduced the SAP table for new builds to the island, but I'm not aware that there was any Section 24 changes under that review.
Final supplementary, Mr Ashford.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I ask the Minister in relation to Section 24, the same question I asked the then Minister 4.5 years ago, what is the definition of dilapidated or neglected? As whereas there is definitions around ruinous, there doesn't appear to be legal definitions I can find in this or any other Act that apply to those two terms, other than Section 24 4B, which allows the Department to issue guidance on the meaning. And can I ask, has the Department ever actually issued guidance to local authorities? And if it has, what legal standing does such guidance have?
Minister to reply.
Thank you. In terms of the specific definitions within the Act, I'll have to come back to the Honourable Member, and I'm happy to do so. And in terms of its specific use, again, I will come back with that information. I don't have that to hand just now.
Mr Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Would the Minister like to agree with me that the Housing and Communities Board has actually already undertaken this consultation, and we will be reporting that back to the Municipal Association on the 23rd of June and to other local authorities in another way soon thereafter, and this will form the beginning chapter of a empty properties initiative as referenced in the Minister's answer, and in fact guidance is actually one of the initial proposals for the Housing Communities Board.
Minister.
I'd like to congratulate my honourable colleague Mr Thomas on doing something ahead of schedule, because I think that's something we should always aspire to, and I hope that he would be willing to share that also with myself and my colleagues in DEFRA, so that we can make any actions that might be necessary from my department. Thank you.
We move on then to question 12 and the Honourable Member for North Douglas, Mr Ashford.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I beg to ask the Chair of the Planning Committee what consideration is given by the Planning Committee to mast sharing when it is deciding whether to approve an application for a mobile phone mast, and if she will make a statement.
And call on the Chair of the Planning Committee, Mrs Christian.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I thank the Honourable Member for my first question in this House. The Planning Committee determines applications which are referred to in accordance with the standing orders. In determining a planning application, the committee has regard to all material considerations, which includes planning policies produced by the Cabinet Office. These include the relevant area local plan, the Isle of Man Strategic Plan 2016, the National Telecommunications Strategy 2018, the Digital Inclusion Strategy 2016, and the Department's Residential Design Guide 2019. Applications for telecom operators are assessed against the Isle of Man Strategic Plan Infrastructure Policy 3, which sets out a balance must be struck between the need for new, evolving communication systems to satisfy residential and business demand, and the impact that the necessary infrastructure will have upon the environment. Measures which may help to achieve a satisfactory balance will include a presumption against visually intrusive masts in sensitive landscapes, the encouragement of mass sharing by different operators, and the removal of redundant infrastructure. Exceptions to this policy would need to demonstrate a strategic national need which cannot be otherwise secured by mass sharing or alternative locations. Each application will be different, of course, specifically the actual proposal and the site, which won't be the same in all cases. As with any planning applications where a proposal may result in negative material impacts, the proposal may potentially be justified on the grounds that there is a need for the proposal and that need outweighs the impact. The Planning Committee are aware of the desire to encourage mass sharing as part of achieving a satisfactory balance between the impact and necessary infrastructure would have on the environment and satisfying residential and business demand. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker.
Supplementary, Mr Ashford.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I'm delighted that the Chair of the Committee referred to Infrastructure Policy 3 in the Ireland Strategic Plan, which she pointed at length from there. Can I ask, though, as the Honourable Chair pointed out, part of that states about encouragement for mass sharing. What I didn't quite get from the statement is how does the committee physically encourage mass sharing?
The Chair.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Planning Committee may consider all material considerations. Failure to comply with an element of Infrastructure Policy 3 RE mass sharing may not in isolation be a reason for refusal, but there may have been a decision which have referenced this alongside other issues. If the Honourable Member would like to speak to me after today's sitting, I'd be happy to give him more information about specific cases he might have. Thank you.
Final supplementary, Mr Ashford.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I most certainly will take the Honourable Member up on that offer. Can I also ask, does the Planning Committee ever consider, when the proposal comes forward, if a mast is capable of mass sharing, as not all types are, and if the mast is not capable of being put to multi-use, is there ever a challenge put back to the individual applying to ask why they have gone for that design of mast?
Mrs Christian.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I haven't got that information with me to hand, but I certainly can come to the member and speak to the member afterwards about it. Thank you.
We move to question 13. Mr Wannenberg.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'd like to ask the Minister of Infrastructure how much is being paid to the incoming airport director by way of a resettlement allowance. Thank you.
Minister Crookall.
Thank you very much. A relocation package was offered for the role of Airport Director. This consists of relocation expenses which are subject to receipts up to £10,000. As a PSC civil service role, expenses for the role were approved in line with the Isle of Man Civil Service Relocation Expenses Scheme. Where a vacancy is to be advertised off Ireland, financial assistance can be offered via the scheme to a successful candidate who resides outside of the Isle of Man.
Supplementary, Mr Wannenberg.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Could the Minister confirm that this is in line with previous resettlement packages, and could he identify, is there a clawback clause in that resettlement package in case that person should leave early? Thank you.
Minister.
It's certainly in line with what's offered to all positions like this. As for the clawback, I'm not sure on that, but I'm certainly happy to look into that, Madam Deputy Speaker.
Further supplementary, Mr Wannenberg.
Thank you. I'd be grateful if you could let us know if that is the case. Thank you.
Happy to do that.